Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Niagara Police Services Board meeting to order for December 14th, 2023. My name is Jen Lawson, and I am the chair of the Niagara Police Services Board. We begin the meeting this morning by acknowledging that the Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hadawindaronk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Regional Municipality of Niagara Police Services Board stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. I'll start with roll call. Member Kiokio.
Present.
Member Gibson.
Present.
Member Yip.
Present.
Member Kapasavanu.
Present.
Member McKendrick.
Present.
Member Steele.
Here.
Do any members have any declarations of conflict or pecuniary interest? Seeing none, if I can ask members Gibson and Yip move that the minutes of the public board meeting held Thursday, November 23rd, 2023 be adopted as circulated. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? No one's opposed, so that is carried. If I can have members Kapasavanu and member Steele move that the minutes of the special public board meeting held on Monday, December 4th, 2023, that the minutes of the special meeting be adopted as circulated. Are there any questions or comments? No, seeing none. All those in favor? No one's opposed, so that is carried. Reports from myself. On November 23rd, board members participated in the Coalition of Canadian Police Reform's webinar entitled The Path to Wellness, How National Training and Education Standards Will Change the Future of Policing. Discussions focused on the prevention of PTSD among police officers and methods to equip them with the knowledge they need to stay healthy before they encounter traumatic events. On December 6th, I attended the Services Cop Shop event at the Penn Centre in St. Catharines. This event pairs an officer with a child, and together they shop with a $200 gift card donated by the Penn Centre to buy presents for their family members this holiday season. The chief will likely speak to the event as part of his verbal report, but I wanted to take the opportunity to express how fun it was to witness so many smiles on such an incredible day for the children and to see such positive interactions between our youth and our police officers. The Canadian Association of Police Governance holds monthly webinars as part of their educational strategy to keep police boards and police executives across Canada apprised of issues currently affecting the policing community. A webinar is scheduled for December 19th at noon entitled Role of Board and Policing Culture, the Disconnect Between Police and the Public. A second webinar is scheduled for January 10th at noon entitled Recommendations for Police Governance from Expert Reports. Board members are pre-registered for all webinars, and those who can't attend at the specific date or time, a copy of the recording will be sent to view at a later date. On January 11th at 7 p.m., the service will be holding a swearing-in ceremony for 6 currently serving police officers and 9 new recruits to the Niagara Regional Police Service. The ceremony will be held in the community room here at headquarters, and board members interested in attending the event are asked to confirm with board staff. The board will be holding a special public board meeting on Thursday, January 11th for the election of chair and vice chair for 2024, and the next regular monthly board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 25th, and both meetings will be held in the community room at police headquarters at 9:30 a.m. And that's all that I have. Chief, verbal reports?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to provide the board with some follow-up regarding some community events that I highlighted at our last month's meeting. Just with regards to the Chief's Holiday Breakfast, unfortunately this year we weren't able to find a vendor that was able to assist in providing breakfast for what we hoped would be a return to what is usually a very popular in-person event. But the reality is that this holiday season, the families supported through community care need our help more than ever. Last year's online holiday breakfast was an alternative way for us to give back and support our community, and it was so successful, we thought we would do it again this year. In lieu of purchasing a ticket to the annual holiday breakfast, Donors can visit a website that we've set up. Special thanks to the staff at the Niagara region who assisted with that, where gift cards are available to purchase in denominations of $15, $25, $50, or $100. And this event will run until Christmas, with all proceeds for this event going towards sponsoring families through community care. Again, that website's www.niagararegion, all one word, .ca/events/NRPS charity. Donations are currently at just over $1,000, and obviously we would welcome any further donations that people are able to provide. And thanks very much for your consideration. Just an update on the Crama Cruiser food drive. The 6th annual Crama Cruiser in support of Project Share of Niagara Falls ran for 2 weeks up until December the 8th. As a result of the program, our headquarters and 2 district members were able to donate a record 2,214 pounds of food for Project Share's Good News Breakfast. So great initiative there. As mentioned by Chair Lawson, our annual Shopping with Cops event took place on Wednesday, December 6th at the Penn Centre Shopping Mall. 80 members from across the service, including sworn special constables, professional staff, and auxiliary members, as well as local OPP and Niagara Parks police members, volunteered to accompany 40 youth from across Niagara on a shopping spree with $200 gift cards that were graciously donated by the Penn Centre. 22 stores within the mall offered free or discounted items for the kids, as well as free gift wrapping that was provided by Revel Real Estate. A pizza lunch was provided by Boston Pizza and Zares. Coinciding with this event, our One District Corps officers also held a toy drive outside the Penn Centre and collected toys to add to the mall's toy drive in support of Community Care St. Catharines. Special thanks to Coventry Limousine Services, who picked up the kids at school, drove them to the Penn Centre in style, returned them back to school, and then delivered their wrapped gifts to their homes later that evening. A great initiative and an excellent opportunity for our officers and civilian members to interact and engage with youth in our community. And I just wanted to thank Sergeant Virginia Moyer and Constable Ryan Sexton for their efforts in organizing this year's event. Another initiative in 5 District, earmuffs and mittens collection, is ongoing in 5 District with the collection of new, unused toques, gloves, mittens, and scarves to be donated to the unhomed and vulnerable population living within the community. And then on December 9th, 6 District members assisted Port Cares with their annual Fill the Sleigh toy drive. In conjunction with the bargain shop, members collected a full cruiser plus a half truck box full of toys, along with $3,700 in cash donations, which will certainly be put to good use at this time of year. And I just wanted to highlight that on Tuesday, December the 5th, Deputy Flynn, Deputy Forty, Inspector Staniforth, and myself attended the auxiliary holiday get-together, where we had the opportunity to meet our auxiliary volunteer members and thank them for their dedication in volunteering thousands of hours each year to serve our community. Which again, we certainly appreciate their efforts to support our members and our community. Just with regards to our 2023 homicide and attempt homicide statistics, during the reporting period, which was November 22nd to December 13th, we've had 1 homicide. We did not have any attempt homicides during that time frame. Year to date, we're sitting at 10 homicides and 3 attempts homicides. Last year, we also had 10 homicides and 7 attempts. 2021, we had 6 and 3 attempts. 2020, we had 5 homicides and 3 attempts. And in 2019, we had 7 and 2 attempt homicides. Just some information with regards to that homicide. On Monday, November 27th at approximately 5:30 p.m., 8 district officers responded to the parking lot of a residential condominium building in the area of Concord Place and Woodward Drive in Grimsby following a reported shooting. Officers arrived and located an adult male suffering from life-threatening injuries. Officers provided medical attention before the male was transported to an out-of-region hospital by Niagara EMS, where the male, unfortunately, was later pronounced deceased. The investigation remains ongoing by our homicide unit detectives, and just for the public's benefit, there is no information to suggest that there is any continued risk to public safety. With regards to our traffic fatality and serious collision statistics, there was 1 fatal motor vehicle collision and 1 life-threatening injury motor vehicle collision during the month of November. Year to date, we have had 17 fatalities in 2023. For all of 2022, we had 18. For 2021, we had 21. For 2020, we had 16. And for each of 2018 and 2019, we had 13 fatalities. A little bit about those incidents. On Thursday, November 23rd at 5:01 p.m., 6 district officers responded with the Wainfleet Fire Department and Niagara EMS for a motor vehicle collision in the area of Regional Road 24 and Wolford Road in Wainfleet. Initial investigation determined a pickup truck was traveling south on Regional Road 24 at a high rate of speed when the vehicle lost control, left the roadway, and flipped over. Tragically, the driver of the pickup, a 49-year-old Wainfleet resident, succumbed to his injuries at the scene, and our collision reconstruction detectives are continuing with this investigation. And then on Wednesday, November 1st at 12:58 a.m., 5 district officers responded with the Fort Erie Fire Department and Niagara EMS to a single-car collision on Dominion Road near Rose Avenue and Craft Road in Fort Erie. Investigation revealed that a BMW SUV had left the roadway and struck a tree. There were 3 occupants inside the BMW, including a male driver. An 18-year-old female resident from Niagara Falls was ejected from the BMW due to the impact. She was transported to an out-of-region hospital with life-threatening injuries where she remains hospitalized. The driver and 19-year-old male passenger from Niagara Falls were transported to local hospitals and treated for minor injuries. The driver of the BMW, a 17-year-old male from Niagara Falls, has been arrested and charged with impaired operation of a conveyance causing bodily harm and impaired operation of a conveyance exceeding 80 milligrams of alcohol. And that matter remains under investigation by our collision reconstruction unit. Just some other items in the news. On Wednesday, November 22nd, our street crime unit detectives in 2 district here in Niagara Falls began an investigation into the sale of controlled substances. As a result of their investigation, detectives seized 133 grams of cocaine, 28 grams of crack cocaine, 101 grams of fentanyl. Estimated street value was just over $35,000. A 37-year-old male from Scarborough was arrested and charged with numerous trafficking-related offenses, and he's been held in custody pending a bail hearing. Since July of 2023, members of the Major Drugs and Gun Unit commenced an investigation in relation to the distribution of narcotics in the region. As a result of their investigation, they were able to identify 6 suspects. On November 30th, investigators executed Controlled Drugs and Substance Act search warrants at 5 residents in the Niagara region. During this search, a loaded .45 caliber semi-automatic handgun, a loaded .45 caliber semi-automatic magazine, a 9mm handgun and ammunition, 515 grams of cocaine, 290 grams of suspected fentanyl, 5.5 grams of methamphetamine, 70 pills of oxycodone, and 80 pills of Adderall were seized. The estimated total street value of the drugs was just over $129,000. 5 males and 4 females were ultimately arrested and charged with multiple narcotics trafficking offenses, firearms offenses, and proceeds of crime offenses. 5 of the accused were held in custody for a bail hearing, and 4 were released on Form 10 undertakings. In one district, street crime detectives were investigating the sale of illegal drugs in the city of St. Catharines when on November 28th they formed grounds to believe illegal drugs were within a Chevrolet motor vehicle in the area of Welland Avenue and Tasker Street. The driver was subsequently arrested and the vehicle was searched. Detectives located and seized just over 400 grams of suspected cocaine, just over 490 grams of suspected fentanyl, and just over $4,500 in Canadian currency. The estimated street value of the drugs was approximately $140,000. A 26-year-old male from Scarborough has been charged with multiple trafficking offenses and was held in custody pending a bail hearing. And on December 2nd, members of the 3 District Detective Office observed a vehicle being operated by a suspended driver in the area of Duncan Street and LaSalle Street in Welland. With the assistance of uniformed patrol, a traffic stop was initiated on the vehicle. As a result of the traffic stop, officers confirmed there were 2 male passengers in the vehicle and that the driver was suspended. Continued investigation revealed that the suspect was in possession of approximately 45 grams of suspected fentanyl. A further search of the vehicle led to the discovery of 141 additional grams of fentanyl, about 1 gram of cocaine, and 8 grams of crystal methamphetamine. The total street value of the drugs seized was approximately $31,000. A 39-year-old male, a 37-year-old male, and a 31-year-old male, all from Welland, were arrested and charged with the following offenses: possession of fentanyl for the purpose of trafficking, possession of cocaine for the purpose of trafficking, possession of crystal methamphetamine for the purpose of trafficking, and possession of a Schedule III substance for trafficking. The 39-year-old was charged with possession of proceeds of crime under $5,000 and failed to comply with a release order and driving under suspension. All 3 were held in custody for a bail hearing. And Madam Chair, that concludes my report for this morning.
Thank you, Chief. Board members, any questions, comments? Member Gibson.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Chief, a lot of good work being done in the drug section there. How many of those people that are being arrested are repeat offenders, or it's an ongoing lifestyle thing for them? Can you give us any idea on that, please?
Through you, Chair. I don't have the specifics about each one of the accused, but we are seeing, and what we're seeing across the province is that an alarming number of people who are arrested, released, and then quickly reoffending. I mean, within our business, it's called the catch and release mode of operation, but you know, I think the reality is it's becoming more and more frequent, that's for sure.
If I may. So the courts are basically, we're putting these people in front of the courts are letting them go again, and then they're right back out selling drugs, like probably within days or weeks. I'm just commenting, I'm not. So it's really an issue of the courts letting everybody go and not keeping some of these offenders in custody and for bail hearings. There was one there, I think, was kept for a bail hearing, but yeah, it's just an issue. The catch and release, as you say, that terminology is so applicable, and our drug and opioid crisis is deepening, and so you just wonder about that, whether we need to, is there anything we can do to affect the court's decisions on that?
Through you, Chair, there has been a fair bit of work that's been done by the OACP, Police Association of Ontario, with regards to tightening up bail reform, and there were some measures that were recently put in place to tighten up the release provisions for individuals who are repeat offenders. And you'll see a grant application that's before you today for signature, where we're seeking approval to have an officer assigned to the rope unit, which specifically looks after individuals who are at high risk to reoffend, and we're seeking your approval to have a member seconded to that provincial unit. So there is efforts and funding that's become available through the province to address this issue. In some cases, there isn't grounds to hold the individuals for a bail hearing, so they're released on an undertaking, and in some cases they're breaching that undertaking when they're reoffending, and then they're being held for a bail hearing. So it's complicated, but you know, I think what's not lost on any of us in the room is the great work that's being done to try and combat the issue within our community.
Okay, thank you. And just to comment on that, the public will often say, oh, they got arrested, why aren't they in jail? And when in fact there are a myriad of rules around releasing offenders, and the Bail Reform Act and that sort of thing. So to the public who wonder about this, that's the reason it's a very complicated area of law, and the police don't really have a lot of control over how that all works. Gather the evidence, put it in front of the court system, and what happens, happens. So excellent work by our drug unit, though. Really good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any other questions, comments? No, seeing none. Next, I would like to go to presentations, and I'd like to recognize former Vice Chair and Board Member Dave Eek, and welcome to today's meeting. Dave's provincial appointment as a member of the Police Services Board expired on November 3rd, 2023, and the Board has invited him to this meeting to formally acknowledge the valuable insight he brought to the Police Services Board during his tenure. Dave was a dedicated and respected member of the board who committed an enormous amount of time and energy over the past several years to many of the challenges this board has faced. I know that the chief would like to take an opportunity to say a few words, and if Dave, if you can start making your way up to the podium, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, and first and foremost, on behalf of the service, I want to extend our sincere thanks to retired, it sounds funny saying that, retired board member David Eek, who's been a valuable and contributing member of the board since June of 2019. Dave's experience working in the private sector as an electrical engineer for General Motors, and as a former elected official, both for the town of Niagara Lake, as well as for the region, I think positioned him extremely well to have an immediate impact on the board. Dave had a very good working knowledge of the issues and challenges impacting Niagara, and across the province. And throughout his 4.5 years on the board, Dave was always an avid supporter of the men and women who are doing the work out on the front line. And we have just a small token of appreciation that we'd like to present to Dave for his long-standing commitment to public service, which extends over 40 years. So thank you very much, David.
Thank you. If I can have the board members come with me up to the podium there, and we're going to be presenting Dave with a commemorative plaque as well as a small token of our appreciation. Thank you. Dave is going to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to say a few comments. When you serve in public or whatever, you always learn a few things, and I would like to share, given this is a public meeting, perhaps some of my thoughts that I've learned and garnered as a member of the Police Services Board. First of all, I'd like to thank the province for my appointment. Certainly, my 4.5 years of service meant a lot, and I appreciate having the opportunity to serve my community. It was funny, just after my appointment, I had a friend say, "Dave, what are you up to these days?" And I said, "Well, I just was appointed to the Police Services Board." He says, "Oh," he says, "congratulations." He says, I have a few comments with respect to that appointment. And the first thing he said, I'm pleased that you said Police Services Board. He says, no longer are we using that word force. And I think it reflects on the abilities of our policing association. The evolution is such to further service our community across the region. And then, of course, he asked me the question that I'm sure every board member around the table has been asked, what do you do? And that's always, I think, a kind of a secret that most people within our community don't quite understand. And I'll give you my perspective. My perspective is that the board's here to serve the province of Ontario, to ensure that their legislation and their bylaws, etc., are implemented by the board and are seen through the policing association. So it's an oversight of policing on behalf of the province. Secondly, there's an oversight that's presented by the board that serves the entire community of the region. The board is, from my perspective, is the voice of the public. We hear in the public, perhaps through the media, issues or concerns, or we have been brought issues directly by individual members of the public. And it's up to the board to assess those and try to resolve the issues around safety and policing within the region. And so I consider that a very important role for the board to represent its citizens. Moving on from that, also the question that came up is what do police constables do and members of the police force within the community? And so for me to understand a little more, I did take what they call a ride-along program and took a Friday evening from 6:30 p.m. to Saturday morning of 6:30 a.m., a 12-hour shift, to view and to observe actually the functionality of policing in the region. And it was most interesting, without going into too much depth, but let me reassure you that it's a bit of an exciting role. You're at the whims, really, of 911 as to what your next assignment's going to be. And it's the need to understand and have quick response to react to those 911 calls. And the police force itself has a body that, if need be, the 911 can gain other members to assist that individual, or they can seek specific officers with credible knowledge on specific issues that can assist as well. So it's a very, very interesting and role that they perform. And I had the chance as well to, as I say, I spent the time with two different sergeants in their vehicles. And at a number of times, we stopped the vehicle and got out. And I want to express that because I think most residents don't feel that a police officer ever gets out of his vehicle. I want to reassure that they have a commitment and assignment to walk amongst the citizens of our region. So I did this ride along in Niagara Falls. I had the chance to walk along areas of the casino in Clifton Hill. Officers were approached by community members, whether they were tourists or residents, and the interaction was terrific. It was very calm and understanding, very professional on behalf of the constables that interacted with the citizenry. And so I just want to commend those officers, because that is not a one-off. That's what I saw as a commitment to service. And that's just kind of a brief understanding. And I guess what I'm leading up to is that I want to express that to the residents of the region, to all its citizens, that they are very, very well being served by the Niagara Regional Police Services. They should be very proud and understand that they are being served by one of the best in Ontario. So I wish the board and the police services the very best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. If I can have members Steele and McKendrick move that the presentation be received. All those in favor? No one's opposed, so that is carried. The next three presentations are going to be part of our ongoing education series. And if I can have the chief introduce the first presentation, the members from the communications unit, please.
Yes, it's my pleasure to introduce Robin Johnstone, who is the administrator within our communications unit. Robin has been a member of our communications unit for over 30 years. I'm not going to, she looks younger now than when she started. I'll leave it at that. She's done a great job, a subject matter expert within the communications field, and she's going to present you with an overview of our communications unit and the work that gets done there on a daily basis.
Good morning. Thank you very much for letting me have this opportunity to present to you on this. So first of all, just an overview of the communications unit. We operate under the operational support side of things, and we're in a unique position where we benefit from having both a uniform inspector as well as a civilian manager in our unit. So from there, we follow the normal flow chart up to the chief. Within the communications unit, we operate on a 4-platoon system, so the same as the officers on the road. And for each platoon, our authorized strength is 2 supervisors. We have 9 communicators, 4 911 operators, and 1 emergency call taker position. And the emergency call taker position is just newly created this year, and it just gives us a lot of flexibility and an entry level to come into our unit. For our day duties, we have 1 quality assurance supervisor, quality assurance and accreditation supervisor, and 1 training coordinator as well. So with the roles that we have within the unit, our emergency call takers, as I said, are our entry level. And it all starts out with a month in the classroom of training, 3 to 4 months on the floor with a trainer, and then they take an exam and they're on their own. The difference between the emergency call takers and the communicators is the role of dispatching. So we have it broken up into 2 separate areas. As a communicator, you are both dispatch and call taker trained. As an emergency call taker, you start off as just answering phones, and then you do have the opportunity, once you're proficient in that, to become dispatch trained. When you move on to dispatch training, again, we have only 1 week in the classroom, and most of the training is on the floor because it is something where it is hard to simulate in the classroom, and really there's nothing better than just real life experience with your trainer sitting right beside you and then eventually separating themselves, so you have a little bit more independence as they go along. For us, so what we do is we are the first contact with the citizens that call in, either on 911 or that are calling in on the non-emergency line for any type of a mobile response for police, as well as through our mobile support unit. We'll take those calls as well and dispatch them. So we're the first point of contact. We're the primary public safety answering point for Niagara, so the primary PSAP. We're getting all of the calls that come in the Niagara region to 911. If a person doesn't specifically say if there's a specific service that they want, such as police, fire, or ambulance, then we triage that call and just get a little bit more information on what is the primary situation. Is it a medical situation that takes precedence over everything? So the call takers are doing that and making sure that the most primary service is getting to them. When we get the calls, we're trying to extract as much information as we possibly can so that we're giving that information to the officers and they can determine the best mobile response that they're having to that call. We also want to gather information. So anything that the people are giving us through vehicles, people, we're searching databases and providing that information as much as we can to the officers, again, to make sure that they have as much information that they can determine what they're going to do and how they're going to do it when they get to those calls. As a lot of calls that we're getting, people are in crisis. So to get that information, it's really important that the call takers are able to de-escalate. A lot of times there are negotiations going on to not follow a person or to stay in the house and not to engage. And then they also coordinate responses with different services that are out there. To date, just to give you an idea of call volume, this was as of the date of the presentation. it was created. So we had 134,676 calls for service created in CAD. So that's just, we get multiple calls coming in. Those are the ones that actually were created in our CAD system for response. Our 911 calls were over 200,000. And with looking at the calls for service we have on a regular basis, we're looking at an average of about 750 non-emergency calls coming in on the 10-digit line. And the chief alluded to my years of service in comms, and I just wanted to, when I was putting this together, it just made me think about when I first started working in the communications unit, they had on a whiteboard that their busiest day of the year was an ice storm, and they had 232 calls in a 24-hour period. Last year, we took over 1,600 calls for service in one day when we had the winter storm. So things are growing quite a bit, and I'm aging myself even more. So right now with our current challenges, it's mostly the types of calls that we're getting. The volume of calls is one thing, but it's the type of calls. It's definitely changed, and it's ever changing where, COVID has made a big change on that as well. We're seeing a bigger impact. So you'll see with the numbers, I've put the numbers there for everything except for the drug overdoses and the VSAs. And that one's a little bit difficult because we get the drug overdose calls or VSAs coming in as multiple call types, so it's harder to track that way. We may get it in as an assist ambulance, or someone may call in for an urgent check the well-being of somebody. So to be able to see exactly how many overdose calls we are getting to be an exact number, it's a difficult one to capture at this point, but we're definitely working to try to get those numbers more accurate. One of the things that I'm proud to say is lacking from our current challenges is staffing. So in 2023, we did have a challenge of staffing because with our hiring in 2022, it was a little slower than normal. But I'm actually very proud to say that out of the police services in Ontario, we felt the effects of that much later than other services, and we recovered much quickly. So we had 10 people successful through training last year. We have another 5 coming in January, and we're already have people ready to start another call-taking class in April. So we're getting ahead of the game, so happy to report on that. Some of the things that we have to look forward to are we have our training, and I've got them in there. We have our in-service training that we always do on an annual basis. We try to do it around February or March. We want to try to amp that up and have 2 in-service trainings per year just because it's such a changing environment. Next generation is around the corner for 911, so that will be a change for our call takers. But before that, our new call handling solution is going to be a bigger change. So those are some things that we're looking at. And finally, one of the important things that we look at is wellness for our people. Because the calls are changing, they are talking with more people in crisis and having to de-escalate and hearing more things. We want to make sure that we're looking after the people in the unit who look after everyone out in the service or in the community. So our supervisors are amazing at recognizing if there's any changes in behavior, checking in on people. When there has been a high priority call, they will check on them and see. We have people that are trained in our peer support unit within the communications unit, and they will check in on people as well. We have a great service psychologist and our mental health clinician. Every time they see a call, they reach out to us to see how they're doing, and they've spent time in the unit as well to see the types of calls that they're taking. Our member support, and we are part of the safeguarding program. So we're trying to make sure that everyone is staying well in every way possible. And that's all I have.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Having sat with the unit for 6 hours one day was completely eye-opening. I know we have some other board members who have done that as well, and I'm sure that people have either comments or questions right now. So board members, any comments or questions? Member Keokeo.
Thank you, Chair. To the presenter, I just spent 3 hours a couple of weeks ago with one of your staff, and I was just amazed at what I've seen. They did a fantastic job. As you said, they're dealing with crisis situations all the time, and it's call after call, and I was just amazed at how they just gather so much information for the officer within seconds, and how they kind of de-escalate the situations. I was able to hear a lot of the calls, and wow, like after the 3 hours that I spent, I think I needed help. But I commend the work that they do, so thank you for the, for your job and for what you do and the staff as well. I really have a more appreciation of what the officers do, what the communication staff, and actually all departments in Niagara services, police services. So it was a great experience. Thank you.
Thank you, board members. Any other questions? Member Gibson?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. What is your full strength in numbers of staff there? How many staff when you're up to full strength?
When we're up to full strength, we should have 15 communicators and 2 supervisors per platoon on the floor. When we have holidays, we're allowed to have, when we get lower than 12 communicators, we'll hire for that. And we try to have our temporary, I try to have a good complement of temporary employees that are already trained that can fill in any of those gaps.
So the entire 911 dispatch staffing would be how many approximately? All platoons, everybody?
So for all platoons, it should be 60
60.
on the
Okay,
floor.
just for the public, because the public doesn't realize how important this is. You have 60 well-trained frontline people working to assist Niagara. It's just important that the public understand how important that is. So that's 60 people that, and it probably needs to grow, as you said. So that's just something for the future that we as a board can be aware of, that's an area here in Niagara Police that probably has to grow. So thank you very much. One more, if I may, Chair. 207,000 911 calls. How many of those would be, not 911 calls, true 911 calls?
I do have the stats, and what we can look at are things that are passed off to other ones. I can get those stats for you. I don't have them in front of me. It's probably it's a smaller percentage than what you think. Most of the calls, there are duplicate calls that affect that number as well, multiple people calling in on the same incident. But I could get a number if that would be a lower priority for you.
No, that's fine. I don't want to create more work for you. I'm just curious. Because you do hear about 911 calls being, I locked my bathroom door, those sorts of things. So, but in essence, most of the 911 calls are true 911 calls that the staff must look after. So, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member McKendrick.
Thank you for the presentation and your many years of service. So thank you very much. I have one question and then a follow-up comment. Just recognizing the launch on November 30th of 988 and seeing the number of suicide calls, and that service 988 is a national initiative that's available to everybody for those with suicidal ideation. I know I'm telling the public, for individuals with suicidal ideation or someone who's concerned about somebody who may have suicidal ideation. I'm wondering if it's on the communications radar of how those services may connect or not connect. I recognize from my own experience that it's very much a new launch and still in development, and I'm just wondering what insights we have from a service communications perspective.
You're right, it is very new, and we are in Ontario. We're having a presentation for how this affects us coming up in, actually probably this week, through the National Emergency Number Association, just to give us a little bit more information. I was quite involved with the making of the standard through the NINA Association in the US, where it's very prevalent, and they've had that for a while. So where it is that even though it's 2 separate entities, it just gives the public, like you said, that easy access to mental health services. If when anyone from mental health services or 988 through their conversation realizes that maybe this should be through 911, they will connect it. We don't have any other information on other resources, but what we would be able to do is transfer someone who is not in need of police response, that just literally does need somebody to talk to or some other services that would benefit them. We can then transfer them to 988 and they would get them to the most appropriate agency. So we have put information out to our unit on that. 988 is there, so if anyone is asking about it, and those services are available.
Follow-up?
Thank you, through you, Chair, and thank you for that information. I know it's in development, and glad to hear it's on the radar and connections are being looked at. I just wanted to share, I haven't been able to shadow yet, but I did have a personal experience last week where I was in a traffic situation. I did call 911, and in that moment of feeling unsure, intimidated, scared for myself and the public, I just wanted to share that my experience with the communications department was professional, it was reassuring, it was supportive, very gentle yet direct, a lot of good guidance, and really, really obvious to me balancing my concern and safety with needing to get information and give clear recommendations on what I should or shouldn't be doing. So I just thank whoever I talked to for that, because my personal experience was amazing. And also thank you for the wellness initiatives that I see on the slides so that they can continue to take care of us in the way I was taken care of. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we have a question or comment from Member Yip.
Thank you, through you, Chair. As a follow-up to the comments about the wellness initiative, we sort of chuckle that we spent 3 hours in the communications unit and then maybe needed help ourselves. Vicarious trauma is real. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what that check-in looks like after a call? And the reason I'm asking is because immediately after a call or immediately after an incident, someone may think that they're completely fine. It might be a few hours, a few days, or even longer later that they realize that maybe they do need some support. So can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Certainly. Through you, Chair. We will do that immediate check-in, and a lot of the times that, even though we have phones may be ringing, regardless, I'm just going to start this 3 different scenarios. A supervisor will still have the person disconnect, take a minute, go out in the hallway, go into the lunchroom, balcony, whatever they need. If the person maybe doesn't come back, they'll go out and check in on them. If they seem that they're fine, great. If they're not, then they will go home. Member support will be notified, and there will be a check-in the next day. If everything is fine, they say they're good after the call, then again, there still is a check-in. I'm usually notified, and I'll check in on them as well. I know the inspector will. We have multiple layers of people that will check in on them. And, you know, without drawing it out too much, but we'll check on them for a couple of times, make sure everything's okay. One of the things that we also will look at is if there's any change in their performance, then we look at that as well. And I know that just with my time that I had on the floor, certain communicators had higher stress incidences, one after another. And you started to see maybe some changes, and having that real frank talk with them, that you've experienced this, are you okay with it? What is happening? And even suggesting other services. Are you talking to somebody? You don't have to tell me, but just as suggestions. So we make sure that we do follow up, and we really ensure they're aware of the services and all the resources that we do have available to them.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate that there are a number of layers to that. I think a lot of the time in a number of professions that deal with emergencies and crises and this sort of thing, the general public maybe doesn't understand that someone making a call or witnessing or taking a call or, right, maybe whatever it is didn't happen directly to them, but it can still be very traumatic. So thank you for your work on that.
Thank you, excellent points. Thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any other questions, comments? No? Thank you for that. If I can have members Kiokio and Kapazavanu move that the presentation be received. All those in favor? No one's opposed, so that is carried. Chief, if I can have you introduce the person from the recruiting unit or people.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It is my privilege to introduce Sergeant Rich Gadro. Rich has been with our recruiting unit for about 7 years now, 6 years. Is a wealth of knowledge and has done tremendous efforts along with the members of the unit in keeping pace with all of the retirements and additional officers that we've added to our strength. So I really appreciate Rich's and the unit's efforts, and he's going to give you an overview of what their work consists of.
Thank you, Chief, and through you, Chair. Good morning. So the recruiting unit, who we are, authorized strength is we have a sergeant, myself, we have 2 constables and 1 civilian clerk. Currently, we have 2 accommodated members that have been reassigned to the unit due to the manage of the high workload that we have. And we report through the career development staff sergeant through the inspector and superintendent of executive services. The recruiting unit is responsible for hiring recruit constables, experienced officers, special constables, and auxiliary officers. Our recruiting timelines, so recruiting constables and experienced officers is always ongoing. We're always accepting applications for those positions. Special constables, we start late June and we go right until mid-December. We're actually finalizing our senior board interviews today for special constables. They'll start training in January. And our auxiliary officers go from July to February. We're finishing our recruitment of auxiliary officers at the end of the year. And by middle of January, or by the end of January, we'll have them identified and going through backgrounds as well for the auxiliary program for them to start training in February. Our busiest time of year, obviously, is when everything is going at the same time, which is between July 1st and December 31st, when we have all 3 processes happening at once. The application process starts actually with the pre-application process through the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police with the OACP certificate program. So this requires anyone who wishes to apply to the Niagara Regional Police Service and most police services in Ontario to go through the website and complete some testing and some requirements. So the first one, after they pay a $250 fee, is Part A, where they'll be given forms to go get their hearing and vision tested to make sure they meet the minimum requirements. They'll fill out fitness logs and they'll complete a consent and release liability forms. Part B, they will complete online mental ability assessments, an incident report writing aptitude tests, and police problem solving aptitude tests, and those are all done online. As well as Part C, once they've completed Part B, they get to do a personality assessment online through the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police. There are no pass-fails, unlike our old processes prior to 2020. This just gives the recruiting units information based on their assessments that we can use for consideration once they submit an application. When the applicant is ready to submit their application, they will go online to our website. They'll submit their resume, the OACP certificate that they've received after completing all the assessments, the hearing and vision assessment as well, all their transcripts, their waiver, and a copy of a valid first aid and CPR level C certificate. We've just introduced our new portal along with the human resources unit so that we have one common look and process for anyone applying for a position within the Niagara Regional Police, whether it's uniform or civilian. So the first stage of the recruitment process, and these stages are pretty well mirrored for every process, whether it be auxiliary, special constable, experienced officers, or recruit constables. So the first stage is a written local focus interview. We'll bring them in and have them fill out a written questionnaire and interview form. Pretty well, we're just looking to see their general knowledge that they have about the Niagara Regional Police Service and policing overall. We'll ask some general behavioral questions based on developmental competencies, just to see what kind of experiences they've had and what they bring with them. It also includes the pre-background questionnaire, which is a questionnaire that's created by the Ontario Association of Chief Police and is used commonly by all police services. And we share that questionnaire with any police service when we have common applicants, just to make sure we're getting the same information that they're disclosing to other services. This portion also has a 2-hour time limit, and it gives us a chance to be able to look at their spelling and grammar and their punctuation. It's the only time where they're actually putting pen to paper for us in a timed event where we can actually see how they do under a bit of stress. The next stage is their fitness assessment. So we do a version of their PIN testing, which includes core endurance, push-ups, trunk forward flexion, and the shuttle run. Our goal here is to see that the applicant possesses an appropriate level of physical fitness to be able to pass the Ontario Police College or the required training in-house, whether it's special constables or auxiliaries, and that they're in a their physical condition is good enough to be able to perform the duties of the position they're applying for. Next, we move on to a blended face-to-face interview. This is a new stage this year. Previously, this stage was broken down into two. It was a local focus interview and then the essential competencies interview. We blended it this year because we found that it was costing us too much delay to do it twice. So instead of doing two separate interviews, pretty well the two parts of the interviews are just combined into one meeting. So the panel interview is always made up of two members of the recruiting unit. And the first part, which would have been the local focus at one time, is a bit of a get-to-know-you interview. And it has questions based on the 11 developmental competencies. Again, our style of interviewing with this interview is to become more conversational so that we feel that we get a better chance to know the applicant and get them comfortable enough so that they're speaking freely about who they are and their desires to become a police officer. The 11 developmental competencies that we look at through here includes information seeking, concern for safety. They're all listed there. Developmental competencies are those that we don't necessarily need for the person to be proficient at, but ones that we figure, well, if they don't have those necessary skills yet, we can develop them and we can work with them. We just want to see what they have and where they're at when they're applying. Then the second part of the blended interview is what would have been before the essential competencies interview. So this is made up of 3 behavioral interviews based on any of the 6 essential competencies. With every intake, we change the competencies so there's new, so the questions are different. And that way, if one applicant, because one of the concerns with the old system up until 2020 is that the competencies have been around for over 20 years and applicants just knew what they were and there was tons of information online. So now this gives us, we have a pool of 18 different questions that we can use and mix and match with every intake, and so it makes it a lot more difficult for someone to come in knowing the questions. So what we want them and what we're encouraging them is for them to be prepared to be able to answer all the competencies when they come in. And when we ask these questions, we ask that these answers be verifiable so that they give us tangible examples, and we ask who could we follow up with so that we can have in the background portion someone verify that their answers were truthful, and again, that adds to their credibility. The competencies here, the essential competencies are those that we really need for them to be able to demonstrate before we can consider them hired for hiring. So some of the competencies are resiliency, problem solving, communication, teamwork, leadership, and inclusivity. The style of interview for this part of the interviewing is really on the applicant's shoulders to be able to demonstrate what they've done and what they possess. And it can be a rather long interview for 3 questions. It can be anywhere from an hour and a half to 2.5 hours long. So we kind of pose the question, we ask them to really give us the details of what they're feeling. And we'll go into probing questions as well to clarify, what were they thinking and feeling through the incidents, so that as they give us these incidents, we can have a better sense as recruiters of the kind of person we're looking to hire and whether they are ready for this position or if they're not. If they're successful through all these steps, then they will be put through to a background investigation. Our background investigations are conducted by retired members of the service who have had long careers and distinguished investigative careers with the service. So they perform the background investigations for us, and they're all required to contact all the references. And while they're doing that, we'll make sure that they get a psychological assessment with a third-party psychologist and a workplace medical through a third-party provider. The backgrounder will confirm all the information that they've supplied by the applicant. They'll be able to go through all the questions that were asked and all the answers that they were provided, so that they can verify as they go through the background to make sure everything they've given us. We send their social media profiles to our cybercrimes unit to do a social media check, and we do an in-depth records check and intel check on the applicant and their family, just to make sure there's no undisclosed criminal histories or anything that might be of concern for them to take this position of police officer. It also includes a home visit. This is really a crucial part of the background process, especially now that we use retired members. It gives the opportunity for them to sit down with the applicant and their families and to really discuss the role of a police officer and the expectations of policing, and to make sure that they're really aware what they're getting into, what shift work is, the demands of working in a platoon, and even for the region, that you're not always going to be in one city or in one place at one time. So it really gives the backgrounder a chance to really assess, is this person really aware, and is their family really aware of the career they're looking to get into. If they're successful at everything and their psych and medical assessments come back positive, then they'll be recommended to go before one of the senior boards. So for constables and senior experienced officers, they will go before the chief and the deputy for a final senior board interview. And it's at that point that the chief would make the decision with the deputies as to who gets hired. For special constables, the senior panel is done with the inspector of court services, the staff sergeant for court services, and our manager of human resources, and they will recommend then who to decide to hire for that. The auxiliaries go through, being that it is a volunteer position. Once they're done if they're successful through their background and everything else, then the recruiting unit makes that recommendation for appointment to the auxiliary unit. So the recruiting, one of the things that we are responsible for as well, other than the interviewing and the backgrounds, is outreach, is connecting potential applicants with this service. So we go to a lot of college and university career fairs. We speak to specific classes in high schools, colleges, and universities, especially the ones with criminology or police foundations focuses. We attend a lot of community events, as well as we host numerous general information sessions where we'll speak about policing as a profession and the recruiting process in general. But also we'll do some focused information sessions, such as our Women in Policing information sessions, our South Asian information sessions, and our Black community information sessions. The Niagara Regional Police Service was one of the first to introduce and implement women in policing information sessions specific for women, and then to copy and adapt that model for our South Asian community members or Black community members, so that we can address their concerns and we can tailor our presentation towards their needs specifically, and they've been very, very successful. Part of our outreach as well is we try to be proactive and think of new ways to be able to connect with our local applicants. So this year, for the first time, we hosted, in cooperation with Niagara College, our first Niagara Police and Security Career Expo, and it was held on October 14th. In total, 23 police services and security agencies from across Ontario were represented, and we had over 1,000 people attend that day. We were able to promote every career opportunity within the service, from civilian opportunities, communicators, auxiliary members, special constables, recruits, and we had people from every unit represented. From human resources, we had Robin from communications that was there speaking about their role, and then auxiliaries and special constables. So it really gave us, put us front and center, and it was a really good event. I know the feedback we've received from Niagara College is their desire for us to do it again and to make this maybe an annual thing. Because we did it with them, it also showed, it was invited to high school students so they could see their next steps forward from the high school age to where they could go for post-secondary at Niagara College, get connected with us as a service and our auxiliary program at that level, and then start working towards a career. So our plans are to plan this to make this a yearly event. So recruiting stats. Recruiting has faced a large challenge over the last several years. As you can see, our recruiting numbers have been on a steady decline. Even at the beginning of this graph, as you look at 2010, we were already in a bit of a downward trend. At our peak, probably around 15, 20 years ago, we were averaging closer to 1,000 applicants a year. And we see that downward trend. The anomaly in 2020 is when the constable selection system process changed and the pre-applicant testing, which was done through ATS, applicant testing services, changed. And so a lot of people that could never, ever apply, because the old process, you couldn't apply unless you passed the pre-applicant testing, suddenly were able to apply. So we have that kind of rise in 2020, but other than that, it's been pretty steady and low. Our recruiting stats, so women hired as constables over the last 5 years, 6 years. You can see right now we are trending to be in the low to mid 20% per year in the last 5 years. This year, again, we're a little lower, but again, there's ebbs and flows on that because as you look through 2022, we're quite high for women in policing. Our overall women in policing since my tenure in 2018 when I came in, our women in police, or our contingent of women in uniform in the service was around 16%, and we're up to about 18.8% now. So which in of itself doesn't seem like it's a huge gap, but to go up to 2.5% in 5 years in an organization that big shows that we're averaging 20% or higher consistently in increasing our numbers of women in our uniform positions. So recruiting applications last year, like I said, 2022 was a very good year for women. We hired 62% of our applicants hired were women. Again, we equity-seeking deserving groups, we had 4 of them, which presents about 90% of our applicants, which right now, as the last time I checked with our local census data, is averaging about where our census says Niagara is as far as a diverse and equity-deserving representation is. And that's our recruit. Our special constables last year, 11% of them were women, and 11% again was from equity deserving groups. Again, last year was the first year that the recruiting unit took carriage of special constable recruitment. Prior to that, it was because special constables are considered civilian members. It was always done by the Human Resources Unit, but to assist them, and since their hiring and their role is more closely aligned with the uniform side, we took it over last year, and we're finding this year we're going to have even greater numbers in these areas. Auxiliaries, again, 22% of the auxiliaries that started in 2022 with us were women, and 17% were from equity-deserving groups from the Niagara region. Again, auxiliaries, our auxiliary unit took a bit of was really affected by the COVID pandemic, and we lost numerous members. So, and a lot of people through COVID have been a little more gun-shy to get back into volunteering and connecting again. So this year we're going to see an increase in those numbers as well. And that's my presentation. So thank you very much, but I'll be open for questions.
Perfect, thank you. I have a couple of questions first, then we'll ask some if anybody else does. What is the provincial average for women in equity-deserving groups that are actually hired? Do you know that?
Provincially, I don't know off the top of my head. I know, I think nationally, we're around 20% for women in uniform. I don't have any information on equity-seeking groups or deserving groups as far as that statistics. Yeah, that's Canadian. Yeah, I don't know specific to Ontario.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Chief, do you have that?
Yeah, I just pulled up the Stats Canada website, and I don't have equity deserving groups, but I do have for women, and it's 23% of all sworn officers across Canada are female officers.
Okay, so we're a little bit lower than the national, so but we're trending towards the right number, so we're trending in the right direction, which is good. If we can possibly look up that information, I'm curious about the equity deserving group, so I'm not asking for it now, but if somebody can get back to us in the future with that information, I'd appreciate it. And then my next question is from the applications that came in, what percentage, you gave us the percentage of who was hired, but of the applications that came in, what percentage is women and/or equity deserving groups?
Thank you, Chair. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I could get that information. It's pretty similar as far as we're looking at about 25% that are women applicants, and I'd say we're probably about 10 to 15% are equity seeking or deserving groups.
Perfect. And one more tough question. What can we do to help increase those applications and/or make people more successful for those two groups?
That's a very good question, Chair. I think one of the things that we're doing well is our, like I mentioned, those information sessions. So we need to keep doing that, having opportunities where we can have discussions. One of the things we do with those information sessions is we do it in smaller numbers at the training units, so we give them a greater sense of what it's like to become a police officer, and also with the smaller numbers so that there's a freedom and a comfort level for them to ask questions and for us to have an open dialogue. So we need to continue to do that. I think I don't think there's anything specific that, like locally, I think the service does a pretty good job of being connected, and the chief through his office does a very good job, and our core officers be connected with our community members at large. I think part of the issues we have overall is not just a Niagara issue, but it's a Canada issue. It's a North America issue with law enforcement, and I think it just takes time, and we need to continue to the good work we do on the front line, and whenever there's opportunities to speak of the good work that is being done on the front line, that's often overlooked, to be able to put that out to combat the negative news, because, you know, a negative press will go on for days, and a good story just never goes out. So I think that's where we need to be more intentional to highlight the good work that's being done by our frontline members.
Perfect, thank you. And do you work with the EDI unit then as well to help with that recruiting, with the ideas and things like that?
Yes, we do. We do. We attend several events that come from the EDI unit. Constable Gul Mohammed comes. He's kind of like another recruiter that we've brought in numerous times. We'll go to specific South Asian events, for example, in Toronto, or the Black Law Enforcement's career fairs in Toronto, and we will always draw his expertise plus other members from those specific equity deserving groups that are a part of their service to be with us, because we are very cognizant that, you know, an older white guy in front of a table doesn't always translate to everyone, so we try to be able to represent everybody when we go to these career fairs.
Perfect. I was trying to find a way to say that, but you said it for me, so thank you for that. It's not lost on me when I look out into our room right now, what sits before us as well and where we sit at the table as well. So thank you for that. Board members, any other questions, comments? Member Yip?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I have a few questions. I'm curious how you're measuring the 6 essential competencies in a meaningful way. I'm thinking particularly of the inclusivity competency and how you might verify that also in a meaningful way. I think a lot of times we ask how people feel about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they say, oh, I think everyone should be included, and we consider that a good answer. So if you could talk to me a little bit about how you're measuring that in a meaningful way.
Yes, through you, Chair. The competencies were identified through a subcommittee of the Ontario Association of Chiefs Police Constable Selection System Committee. So some of them come from way back, but as far as inclusivity, this is one that was completely redone. I don't have the questions verbatim, but they go from, pretty well we're asking is some of the questions, how do they interact and how do they build bridges with their community members? So we're looking for tangible examples for any of those essential competencies, not so much of how they feel, but what have they done, or when have they been in positions where something has been, someone's been treated unfairly, and what have they done in those situations, or how have they changed their perceptions from one group to another because of experiences in their life. And again, because we're looking for something that's verifiable, we want to know, well, who was there and who was this person that was significant for you that helped you change your opinion, or what was the event that we can follow up with. Again, sometimes depending on their age or when the event happened, the ability to identify well and verify well, it can be challenging. And it's one of those ones when it comes to diversity, we really want to show some grace because especially as we speak and we interview more diverse people, their idea of the challenges that they see through the lens of diversity is very different than mine. So we want to give them the grace to be able to identify to them what that means. And sometimes we've seen it's not only a white applicant talking about their experiences in one way, but it's also members of, like, for example, the South Asian community that come here and speak about their experience as a new Canadian and how they've had to build bridges to learn the community. And so to us, that's a good answer as well, because they're now adapting and learning and building bridges both ways. So again, I apologize, and if you want, I can get you sample of those questions that we use, but the idea is that we're looking for them to demonstrate that they've been proactive, that they've experienced opportunities well to grow and be diverse and inclusive.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I think it's important that you're asking for action. I think a lot of times people would say, oh, but they're young recruits and maybe they haven't had a lot of opportunity. I think in the world we live in now, people have had lots of opportunity and it's telling if they've taken it or not. I do have a few more questions through you, Chair. This one's probably a little bit shorter answer for you. There are a lot of steps before the senior board interviews. I'm curious how common it is for an applicant to fail at the point of the senior board interview. So like they go through a lot of steps before they sit in front of these three gentlemen. How common is it for them to reach that point and then these guys say no?
It's very uncommon. I would say there's maybe a 2% chance. Now, the chance is probably, it's 100% they could do it, but we don't send anybody, I don't put my name, and my unit does not send anybody through our chain of command, through the chief's office that we don't think possesses the qualities to be considered. Oftentimes, unfortunately, some applicants, whether it's the nerves of the panel, because I always tell them it's the easiest questions, it's all about you, it's the panel that's difficult. It's whether it's nerves and they just can't, they don't have a good interview, or in that moment in time they're just flat, or they're just failing to demonstrate that they're ready for this position. And we accept that because, I mean, I get nervous when I go up and speak to the chief and deputy as well, and I'm more familiar with them, so. But it's rare.
Okay, thank you. And I assumed it was rare. I just again, because there are so many steps. But I have, in other conversations, I have mentioned to some of the staff that I feel like I wouldn't want to do it. The nerves would be a little much. Through you, Chair. You mentioned that you copied the Women in Policing information session to the South Asian information session and Black community information session. I'm hoping that you have. I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about how you modified the Women in Policing session to the South Asian and Black populations, given that a direct copy is not likely to be appropriate.
Thank you. Well, yeah. Direct copy might be a thing. We copied the format. So the content of the process and what you need to get hired, that stays the same. But the format that we copied was doing it at the training unit, involving the members of the training unit with us and having them go through like the whole training unit, including the range, the DT room, where they explain what the training is like, and puts them in a position where they can see themselves, oh, I can be, and we put them through some minor stuff to be able to do that. But the biggest change is when we do the presentation, we have the conversations, when we specifically address things that are particular to them. For example, and this goes back to the Women in Policing, and one of the great things that we have now is one of our Women in Policing and Service groups. When I first joined the units, and we had Constable Abbott, who was doing the presentation for Women in Policing, when it's a large group of mixed men and women, a lot, at our regular information sessions, a lot of the women, because they're outnumbered, won't ask questions. But suddenly at the Women in Policing, they're asking questions that are specifically to them. And one of them I was like, oh, I had never thought of that, but it was a young lady just put up her hand and asked, how do you go to the washroom with all that kit on? And I'm like, guys, we don't think about that, but women, and then I remember Sergeant Abbott's response at the time is you got to pre-plan it. You got to be mindful of it because it just doesn't come off like that. So it's that kind of stuff where we are opening ourselves up to questions that we may not even be aware of. And having members of our service that are from those equity deserving groups to be present at those conversations so that they can talk about their experience from them. Because we realize and we're cognizant that a lot of these young people that are applying from those equity deserving groups are breaking barriers. They're going against what cultural norms for their cultures might be, or what they're used to in even their own families. So we want to be able to open the conversation so that they're having a meaningful connection with someone from our service that they can say, I want to be like that person. And if they can do that, then I can do it, and they know what I've been through. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, likely my last question. When you discuss equity-deserving groups, women are an equity-deserving group, so I'm curious, you've got numbers for women and numbers for equity-deserving groups, and I'm hoping they're not the same people. So for instance, if the applicant or recruit is an Indigenous woman, where are you counting her?
That's a good question. We would probably in both. Yeah, because she represents both.
Okay, so I suppose the next time you come to us with statistics, can we find a way to, I mean, you're presenting percentages as well, so it's giving us a bit better sense, but if we could find a way to not count people in 2 different or 3 different or however many different groups, that would be helpful.
Yes, one of the things that we've actually just addressed this year, and that actually just went online earlier this month, is our new application portal, which is now all electronic, and part of that will include or includes some onboarding self-identification stuff, questions, which wasn't really part of it, wasn't done as well as we could have done in the past, so I'm not saying it doesn't well. So I'm hoping that those numbers will be more accurate as moving forward, as we have a system in place now to get that information accurately.
Thank you. That was actually a good question. So I don't know if it necessarily needs to be saying that only counting them once, but maybe identifying where you've counted them twice, because that's probably going to be easier, because somebody could be part of multiple, as Member Yip pointed out. They could be part of multiple. So I agree. I think we should be putting that in our future presentations. So thank you for that. Member Capistrano, I think you had your hand up too.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm going to take us back to the $250 that possible candidates have to pay for the certificate for OACP. How real a barrier is that for people applying to, or wanting to be in police? I know for some people $250 doesn't sound like a lot of money, but for other people that's a lot of money. And if it is a real barrier, is there any access to scholarships that potential students have, or is there any merit in creating a scholarship for students or people to access to be able to write that exam?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. No, I'm not aware of any scholarships. However, and it is a barrier. Anytime there's a financial cost, it presents a barrier. There is a way, however, if someone contacts the OECP, they can make a request for the fee to be waived and for consideration for that. Again, this is one of those issues that, again, is a decision based from the OACP. It's not really well advertised, partly because they want genuine people, like the recruiting units know it. So if somebody comes to us and says, hey, I'm having an issue, we would direct them to that. But again, that's a decision at the OACP level as to why, and it's not put out there as well as it does. But there is a method if someone's under a financial burden that they can waive it.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I'm trying to understand the numbers. I know that the story is there's problems in trying to recruit Canada-wide, right? And when I'm looking at the stats that you've got here, you've got 244 applications, for example, and you take in only 21. Is that because the other 200 were terrible? Or is it because you have a specific number that you're looking for that period? Like, we have a high number of applications coming in and we only take in 21, and then we say we're short-staffed. So I'm just trying to, how does that work?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. No, that's a very good question. We would hire 42, or like, it's not that, we're not eliminating people because we don't have space. Like, if they were good qualified applicants, they were getting hired. So 21 is the max that we could find that were qualified. And we've looked at the percentage of applicants that are unsuccessful at each level, and there's a pretty well even stream as they go through. So, which we would expect, and as we look and we evaluate whether our system, our process is fair, we should see that there's a consistent number through the years that are eliminated through each stage, so that there's not, okay, because if we were to see, and that's what we look for, is, are we eliminating a lot of people at one level? Okay, what's the problem with that? Is there a barrier there? So we've looked at to make sure that people are being eliminated, or are eliminating themselves, is what we like to say is, and there's a lot of different variables. We lose quite a few to the psychological assessment. Our psychologist just doesn't feel that they're ready to go through, so we miss them through that. We find a lot of people that are just haven't been truthful through the process. They've hidden stuff, so we have concerns of integrity. And in this position here, it's one of those things, I can't hire somebody that I don't think I can trust fully. So, and then there's also just, it's a difficult process. And we have a lot of times first applicants, the first time they get through, whether it's nerves or not being prepared enough, that they're not successful, but they'll reapply and then they're successful again. However, in this past year, the recruiting unit has, part of the changes we've made is to identify potential recruits that are faltering but possess or show promise to being good candidates. So we're not just eliminating like we used to, where, oh, we're moving on from you because you were unsuccessful. If we think you've got promise, we'll look at putting them on hold and identifying the issue we need them to work on, whether it's their physical fitness or their interviewing skills, and then so that we can bring them back in short order to keep them in our system and keep them moving through without eliminating them.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just to follow up on what you said in terms of, like, you gave an example of the psychological assessments being, and you said the process is a difficult process. So what I'm hearing is something that is systemic. So are we taking any notes during this process where we've got 200 people each year applying? Are there specific categories that keep recurring as the ones where people are failing or are not being successful at, and what are we doing about it to revamp the system if it's all systemic?
Yeah, no, thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, that's what I was saying. We've looked at to make sure there's no single area that is causing more problems than others. So we're seeing a consistent level of people being unsuccessful. So we're not seeing any one area where they're more unsuccessful than others. Just for context as well, for years, the old constable selection system, which stopped at the beginning of 2020, which was really a system that was built on how do you manage thousands of applicants for a few spots. Back then, it was designed so if you stumbled, you're done. That's it. Bad answer, unprepared, nerves, you're done, because you just had to thin the herd. Our new process now is more about identifying potential and working with them and keeping them connected into our service in one way or another, or deferring them to whether from constable to special constable or even to auxiliary, so that they feel that we're investing in them and that this is a service they want to be connected to for the rest of their career.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, if I could just clarify a couple of points. As an example, one of the barriers that's currently in place is where all police services across the province are competing for a limited number of spots at each intake at the Ontario Police College. So for an example, we had identified 16 successful candidates for the intake that's currently at the college, but we only were offered 11 spots. So in some cases, we would love to be able to hire more, but it's just a vacancy issue at the police college. One of the things that the Ontario government has recently introduced to try and break down some of the barriers. The financial barriers, as an example, is to take away the requirement for recruits to pay for their own tuition. Again, we're talking about somewhere between $15,000 and $16,000, recognizing that for some individuals, new Canadians in particular, that presented a financial barrier, as well as the education requirement. Again, I think I've spoken before that I think it's around 96 or 97% of all of the candidates that we hire have either a college diploma or university education, but recognizing that there may be some who are disadvantaged from various equity deserving groups or from our new Canadians that may not necessarily have had the opportunity for financial barriers, et cetera, to attend university or college. And so that's another avenue for applicants to potentially become police officers. Then once they're hired, we certainly have a tuition assistance program, and we offer all of our members, whether they're professional staff or sworn members, the opportunity to further their education once they're a member of the service.
Thank you, and I think I just want to clarify one point. My understanding when you did your presentation before, it was never a requirement that you had to have a degree or a college diploma. It was always just, it happened to be the applicants typically had that. It was always a grade 12 education. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah, and it has, the educational standard has not dropped. It's always been grade 12. There was the intent to increase the educational requirement, and they backed away from that requirement in order to be more inclusive.
Perfect, thank you. Member Kapasvanu, did you have any other questions or comments?
Maybe just a comment towards what you say, Chief, through your chair, with regards to the college vacancies, is there's a disconnect, right? If we've got 16 candidates that can get, and we only offered 11 spots, how do we advocate for more spots, or for the system to be changed, really, where the college can offer more seats? Who do we talk to about that in terms of advocacy for them to increase the number of seats, because they know that there's a need in the country for police officers, and yet you have a limited number of intake in the college?
So through you, Chair, I think the Ontario Police College has attempted to address that gap by adding a fourth intake. Traditionally, it was 3 intakes per year that they offered. So they've added a fourth intake, which puts more pressure on our training unit to have an online component delivered here before they actually go to the police college. I think police services across the province and across the country are all competing for the same recruits right now. I believe that the number of applicants was somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 that were requested for this intake, and they only have a capacity of, I think, 455, recruits, somewhere in that neighborhood. So it's I think they're doing their best by adding a fourth intake. It's a capacity issue with the existing infrastructure that's in place at the police college.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, and I have a quick follow-up question for that. So the 5 people who weren't successful in that case where we were only able to send the 11, do we give them the first opportunity for the next intake?
Yes, they are hired just with a different start date, so we keep them on, yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Member Yip.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So that was my first question. My second question is it possible that someone would be going through the recruitment process with more than one service at a time? Like, would they be going through the process with Niagara and going through the process with Toronto, and then, oh, it's Toronto that has the capacity, so of those 16, there's 11 spots in Niagara, but Toronto has room for me, so I'll go there. What does that happen? How often does that happen?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. Yeah, no, that happens a lot. It's not uncommon for applicants to put in 3, 4, 5 resumes with different services at the same time. Fortunately, the Ontario Police College doesn't give us the numbers until they're after we need to have them hired usually anyways. So nobody's leaving us because of occupancy at the police college. If we're losing anybody, it's because they may have gotten an offer before us. But even then, we've still had people that have accepted an offer and then turned it down later when they got ours. So it happens. We're lucky here that we get a lot more people coming to Niagara than leaving Niagara.
Thank you, and I have actually a question for the chief. The number of people that we've hired based on the recruitment, is that replacing, because obviously we have retirements, what is the average number of retirements in a year, and are we able to hire at the capacity that we need to?
So through you, Chair, roughly about 25 a year we lose through retirement. And one of another area that we use to supplement our hiring, excuse me, is experienced officers. So we may not be able to get everybody that we want through to the police college, but we have another stream of applicants, and we can supplement the numbers by having currently serving officers hired.
So hopefully we're not stealing from other people and then other people are stealing from us, but it sounds like most people want to come to Niagara instead anyway. Correct?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. Sorry, board members, this is a really good discussion. Member McKendrick?
Yeah, thank you very much, and a lot of my questions have been answered, so thank you for that. It's quite an intense, not easy process, and I appreciate the involvement and from learning, so thank you for all of that. I'm curious about slide 17, and apologies if I missed it. You referred to the outlier in 2020, but I also noticed there was a significant dip in 2014. Do we have insight into what happened in 2014 for that significant dip that seems to have continued?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Only speculative. All I can say is and again, this is not a Niagara thing, this is the thing. It's just overall public opinion. It seems to have changed in that time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any other questions, comments? Chief? No? Thank you. That was a great presentation. We really hammered you with a lot of questions, so thank you for taking the time to answer them all. Thank you. If I can have members Yip and members Gibson move that the presentation be received. All those in favor? No one's opposed. That's carried. And Chief, one more presentation, if you can introduce for the Emergency Task Unit, please.
Yes, Chair, last presentation, it's my privilege to call forward Constable Claude Labrie, who's a team leader with the Emergency Task Unit, been a long-time member of the unit, brings a lot of subject matter expertise, as well as Sergeant Chris Wegland, who's one of the supervisors overseeing the unit, was formerly a constable with the unit as well, and the two will present to you on the services that our ETU provide.
Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you to the board for having me here today. My name is Constable Claude Labrie. I'm a team leader with the Emergency Task Unit. I am here with my Sergeant, Chris Wegland, and today we'll talk a little bit about our unit. Thought it appropriate to start with a brief history. In 1974, Niagara Police Service, freshly formed Niagara Police Service formed a part-time team, Emergency Task Force, as it was known at the time. In 1994, ETU became a full-time tactical team, later becoming a hostage rescue team in 2004. At that time, in 2004, ETU recorded 75 calls for service. In 2021, ETU recorded its highest calls for service at 193, prompting the eventual expansion of the unit from 14 to 17 members. As it is, 2024 will mark our 50th anniversary for providing services to the Niagara people. We are governed by the Police Services Act of Ontario, Regulation 399, Section 21, the Police Services Board Bylaw 242-2000 and 243-2000. And we have General Order 089.08. Our purpose is to resolve any high-risk situation through nonviolent means whenever possible. A highly trained and disciplined team is often required to provide this specialized support to ensure the safety to the public, police, and to the suspect. Our accreditation comes through the Ministry of the Solicitor General. We are certified as a hostage rescue team in the province. Our certification is also the ability to instruct and qualify members of hostage rescue teams, tactical teams, and perimeter control and containment. Our mandate is to provide specialized tactical support to increase the safety of the public, police, and the suspects during high-risk situations. These situations may include hostage takings, barricaded persons, high-risk warrants, building and area searches, canine tracks, persons in crisis, VIP security and witness protection, missing persons through search management. Our capabilities include bomb and/or explosive disposal, sniper, tactical rope access, hazardous materials, RPAS, also known as a drone, night vision and thermal capabilities, explosive force entry, and crisis negotiation. We are grateful to have some exceptional equipment at our disposal. Since its procurement in late 2019, ETU's Armored Rescue Vehicle, or ARV, has been deployed 106 times in response to armed persons or violent incidents. The ARV offers an unmatched level of safety to our ETU members, negotiators, and tactical medics, and has caused a fundamental shift in the way ETU resolves critical incidents. We also have the remotely piloted aircraft systems, RPAS, drone. It's been used a total of 46 times since 2020. There are currently 4 members on our team that are specially trained through Transport Canada to operate the drone, and it's used predominantly for search and rescue and tactical operations. Our selection process is an intensive 6-week program. It's intended to select the most highly motivated and self-disciplined. We draw from the ranks of the NRPS, and you must be a second-class constable in good standing order with the service. Our training is extensive to keep our accreditation. Involves 1 day of tactics or maintenance training per week, 1 day per month for crisis intervention, immediate action training, IAT training, 1 day per month of forced entry techniques, 2 periods per month for pistol and carbine training, 4 consecutive days of team training per year, usually in the spring and the fall, and annual participation in joint training that generally involves our negotiation teams and our incident command structure. If you also have a specialty skill on the team, you are required to conduct additional training. That would include 1 day per month of rappel training, 1 day per month for snipers, and 3 additional days monthly for our EDU, Explosive Disposal Unit personnel. As of 2022, we have formed a partnership with Niagara Health Systems and initiated our Tactical Medic program. These are specially trained advanced care paramedics that are integrated into an ETU team, and they are there to provide immediate life-saving support. As a result, members of ETU also receive advanced emergency casualty care training. Also at our disposal are members of our tactical support group. These are members drawn from the NRPS, and it's required training for the members of our Marine unit. It's a specialized 3-week program. It is accredited through the Ministry of Attorney General, and they provide us with invaluable support during ETU operations. Concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Members? I actually have a quick question. So you mentioned about the Marine unit as an example. How do you work alongside of, say, Gamaroo, or I believe Port Colborne also has a unit as well that goes out? How does that work together with the NRP?
Thank you, Chair. I believe you're referring to Pokemar, perhaps? Pokemar, yes, they are a search and rescue function that operates through, is it JSOC? Sorry? Yes. JSOC, which is a D&D establishment out of Trenton. They have their own procedures. We generally don't work very close with Pokemar, given that they are a Marine capability. However, as Marine unit supports us in our tactical operations, we can also provide some support to the Marine unit through qualifications that we've received, specifically Med A3, our Marine-based courses that we have gotten. So if necessary, we can go out onto the boats with the Marine unit and assist them with that.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, sorry, any other questions, comments? Member McKendrick?
Thank you for the presentation. Referring to slide 9 around the armored rescue vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just hoping, and it's good to see the use, so 106 times, and also identifying the level of safety that provides to the service to impact the intervention and the response that is needed. I just wonder about, can you give us some examples of caused a fundamental shift in the way ETU resolves those critical incidents? And the reason I ask is, being part of the board when it was brought into the service, I think there was some misperceptions that it was going to be used as a heavy hand or a, so just looking for some of those real examples of where it's helped with incident resolution.
Yes, ma'am. The armored rescue vehicle has been able to connect, for example, our negotiation team. A lot of instances, we've been able to place them safely into the armored rescue vehicle, and they can have a much more intimate interaction with perhaps a person that's armed or barricaded inside of a building. Getting that negotiator closer gives them kind of a better feel of the environment. Other than perhaps in the prior circumstances where they are much more detached. They are at a command post area that's much more detached. We've also found that our tactical medic program, these are again paramedics, highly trained paramedics, of course, to be with us. However, we have found it extremely beneficial to have the armored rescue vehicle very close to a crisis incident, and we can have that tactical medic inside the armored rescue vehicle where they can perform any life-saving measures under relative safety, perhaps. So as far as fundamental shifts go, getting those resources closer to a call have been extremely beneficial for us. It also represents a change in the way we are becoming much more intimate, involved in the call. We can get a lot more closer, and that way we can provide a higher degree of safety to the community by doing so. The ARV, by doing that, oftentimes results in incidents being resolved a lot quicker than in traditional methods. 8 to 10 hour call-outs were somewhat of a normalcy when I was first on the team, and those numbers have been substantially reduced since the introduction of the vehicle.
Yeah, thank you for that, and it helps me understand and confirm for myself and hopefully others that providing that safety allows greater connection and being closer to the incident and the person who's involved, so that we can resolve that in a healthier and a way. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, and I appreciate the extra time explaining that, because I know nothing's driven me, and I'm sure it drives everybody else here crazy too. calling it a tank, which I know it's not. I've heard that multiple times, and I appreciate the fact that we're understanding what the ARV is. It's a rescue vehicle, and it's not a tank, so thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the presentation. Very good.
Thank you.
If I can have members McKendrick and Capasavanu move that the presentation be received. Is all those in favor? No one's opposed, so that is carried. Thank you for that. We'll move on to consent agenda, and I'm going to move items 8.1 to 8.3 in block. If I can have members Kiokio and Gibson move that the information be received. Thank you. Are there questions, comments? No, seeing none. Chief, any questions or comments? No? I guess you wouldn't have questions, but you might have comments. No, seeing none. All those in favor? No one's opposed. That is carried. We'll move on to 9.1 for new business. If I can have members Yip and Steele move that the board accept the Niagara Regional Police Service review of the investigative protocol, which outlines both the capabilities and limitations of the police with respect to investigating incidents of threats, harassment, bullying, and hate bias-related offenses against elected officials, and further that the report be forwarded to the Regional Council. Any questions or comments? No, seeing none. All those in favor? No one's opposed, so that is carried. 9.2, before we consider special fund request item 9.2, I would like to remind members of the public that the special fund does not form part of the police operating budget and is separate from the regional tax base. The special fund is a discretionary pool of funds which is used for grants and donations, and disbursements from the fund are made in accordance with the guidelines provided in the Police Services Act and with Board Bylaw 376-2018, Special Fund Administration Limitations and Guidelines. If I can have members McKendrick and Capasavanu move that the board approve a donation in the amount of $1,500 from the special fund to the Socks for Change program. All those in favor? No one's opposed, so that is carried. Do any board members have any other new business? Member Steele?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. At the last meeting, I spoke about, or actually during our budget, with regards to our contingency reserve, that I'd be bringing a motion forward to send to Regional Council. And this is my motion, that the board direct staff to formally request to the Niagara Regional Treasurer that the region waive the surplus deficit policy so that surplus funds resulting from the 2023 operating year be transferred to the police contingency reserve to be used to fund anticipated cost pressures resulting from the new Community Safety and Policing Act of 2019, the CSPA. If I get a seconder for that?
Perfect. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Member Gibson? All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Do we have to speak to it first? Discussion? Any?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
So with regards to how our budget was handled this year, and then at the region, it was told to us, as the three of us that were there, that, hey, you've got reserves, bring your budget down using reserves, which we partly did. And then we made other changes to our budget, which we brought forward, and we were able to reduce it. However, reserves don't last forever if you keep dipping into the pot. And we know as a police board that over the years that's happened, so that our reserves, quite frankly, aren't healthy. And the fact that previous a meeting, I think it was in either late October or even November, with regards to what the surplus could look like, depending on what would happen in the next couple of months. And then we did have the Grimsby incident, which obviously will dip into that because of the cost of it. We don't know what's going to happen in the next few weeks before the year ends. So I believe there will be a surplus to us based on our last year's budget or current year budget. So I just think it's healthy that we get our reserves back up so that if, we're asked again, that the cupboard doesn't go dry. So that's the reasoning why I brought this forward.
Perfect. Any other comments or questions? No? Seeing none. All those in favor? No one's opposed, so that is carried. Thank you. Before we adjourn the public portion of our meeting, I would like to take this opportunity to I skipped a whole section. Silly me. Let's go back. pages stuck together. In-camera report, sorry, 11.1. If I can have members Gibson and Kyokyo move that in accordance with the board direction, the above noted item is received as public information. All those in favor? No one's opposed, so that is carried. Sorry, and I think I skipped also. Chief, did you have any other things that you wanted to bring forward?
I was just going to raise, in regards to the motion that Member Steele brought forward, there's still a lot of uncertainty with regards to the Community Safety and Policing Act, which we're led to believe will be enacted as of April 1st. But, you know, just in terms of some of the costs that we've identified at this point in time, the additional cost of C8 rifles, rifle mounts that we would have to install in our patrol vehicles, as well as ammunition. That alone, I think we've identified at about $785,000. We've identified recurring costs of approximately anywhere from an annual cost of $706,000 to $1.1 million to ensure that this additional training that's going to be required on an ongoing basis is maintained. And then additional staffing requirements. There was a request within our budget to add one training constable within the budget. We know that there is the likelihood that we will have to add an additional 4 and potentially up to 9 officers to deliver the additional training requirements that are outlined within the new regulations. So it's significant, and those costs range from $751,000 in 2024 dollars to $1.3 million. Again, those would be recurring costs as well, because we would require them on an ongoing basis. So there are significant costs, and we have not seen the final iteration of the regulations as of yet, so we can't be definitive in what those costs are, but as soon as we know, then we'll advise the board accordingly.
Thank you. So by quick math, it looks like at least 2.6 million just in additional training requirements and or requirements under the CSPA, which is completely out of our control. So hopefully either there's provincial funding or the region understands why we're coming in with the numbers that we're requesting. So hopefully they're listening and they're watching, and they're going to forget by next year, but we'll remind them. Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments before I move on? Okay, so before we adjourn the public portion of this meeting, I would like to take this opportunity to extend the board's best wishes for the holiday season. And while these continue to be challenging times for all of us, I would ask that we think of the most vulnerable members of our communities, including those less fortunate. The holiday season is a time for joy and giving, but for families and individuals going through hard times, it can be painful. Please consider reaching out or dropping off food and necessities for them, and donations to the Chief's Holiday Breakfast, Community Care, the United Way, or the charity of your choice will help families and individuals who may be struggling during the holiday season. Throughout this season and as we move into the new year, we wish everyone peace and connections with family and friends. On behalf of myself and the Niagara Police Services Board, I would like to wish everyone a safe and happy holiday season and best wishes for the new year. The Police Services Board will adjourn the public portion of the meeting and reconvene in camera for consideration of confidential matters pursuant to Section 35(4) of the Police Services Act. Thank you, everyone.